It was a very discouraging season because I just felt like I had to keep doing everything that everybody else was doing just to stay afloat or
Mm.
compete. And it really got me into just this negative place of feeling like I needed to create based on what other people were doing, as opposed to, like I said, that whole idea of why I started wedding planning, why I started the journals, of just feeling like I was just following something God was calling me to do.
Welcome to the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast, where we hope to inspire you to embrace your God-given gifts, skills, and passions in order to lead with confidence. We want you to remember that you are fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God, and you are fully loved by Him.
You have been designed on purpose by God with unique gifts and passions in order to love and lead those around you. I'm your host, Esther Littlefield, a pastor's wife, business owner, mom, and writer.
And I'm Esther's co-host, Holly Kane. I'm a wife, mom, and business owner. I also write at hollykane.org, where I focus on my passion for women's ministry.
Together, we chat about important issues that Christian women leaders face. In addition, we interview other women just like you who lead in various roles, from church to community to business. Through this podcast, we offer you encouragement, tools, and resources to help you on your leadership journey. We are so glad you're here with us. Hey friend, and welcome to episode 90 of the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Esther Littlefield, and today we are continuing in our series about business with our guest, Valerie Woerner. I want to encourage you to stick around whether or not you are a business owner, because Valerie shares some really valuable insights in this conversation that apply regardless of whether or not you run a business. So you're going to hear us talk about her leadership journey and how she kind of fell into leadership. She didn't go out looking to be a leader, and she didn't really consider herself a leader, but she ended up in some of those roles. So we talk about that and how she has learned to become a leader, some of the ways she's done that through the years. We also dive into how she started her company, Val Marie Paper, by creating something that she needed for herself, rather than going out and looking at what she wanted to create for the marketplace. You're going to hear how her company grew and some of the ways that she's managed that process as well. What I love most about this conversation, though, is what Val shares about how she has done things differently in business and how she continues to be very purposeful and prayerful about the way that she runs her business. She shares one key to being a good leader that I think all of us should hold on to, including me, and this applies no matter the role that you're in. Plus, we get into a few of the ways that she keeps everything running smoothly in her life and her business. So I know you're going to love this conversation with Val. One thing I want to mention before we dive in, and we didn't talk about this in the episode, but I want to let you know that she has offered to give away one of her prayer journals, which are beautiful, by the way, to one of you who listens to this episode. So we're going to be doing a giveaway for that prayer journal. So make sure you hop over to the show notes for this episode. If you're listening live when this comes out, this is early March 2020. If you're listening within the week that it comes out, head over to estherlittlefield.com/episode 90 to get all the details on how you can enter that giveaway. So let's go ahead and dive in to our conversation with Valerie Woerner. Welcome, Val, to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, so let's start off just by having you share a little bit about yourself and what your life and leadership looks like right now.
Okay, I am married to Tyler. We live in South Louisiana, and we have two little girls, Vivi and Vanna. Man, leadership right now is simple, but daily it's leading two girls who work for me for Val Marie Paper.
All right, so I would love to go back in time a little bit, Val, and find out if you remember a point in time in your past, in your childhood or young adulthood, when you kind of recognized that you were a leader or that you saw yourself as a leader.
Yeah, okay, so I have a twin sister. So growing up, I honestly don't remember many moments of feeling like a leader because we always had that other person to rely on, to where anything that we did, I felt like being a leader was not required of me, unfortunately. And even through school, through college, that was not something I saw myself as. I saw myself as somebody who could follow instructions, follow rules, but it was not something like almost felt like I fell into it when the Lord was calling me to different things that required it. But honestly, would not have, like, looking back, I can see how things like starting a Bible study or doing things like that kind of made me a leader. But I really just saw it as just obeying God and following what He was calling me to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that does make sense. So can you tell me a little bit more about some of those experiences that you had where you said you kind of fell into it and you just
Yeah.
it happened by by way of requirement, I guess?
Yeah. So I know that there's been seasons of just feeling like praying for friendship, praying for opportunities to like be in community with women. And when you finally just feel like it's not, I don't see the opportunities out there, so I'm going to make it. And I remember leading a small group of women, and it was about friendship. And it was kind of like this random group of girls, probably 12 of us. And I remember pretty much everyone at one point just said, "Thank you so much for stepping up and doing this." And I just remember being taken back thinking, I was kind of just doing this for me because I knew I wanted it. I hadn't seen it as like taking on this role that I guess a role of a leader just always seemed so much bigger than what I was doing at the time when, like I said, you just kind of like feel like you fall into it. But it really is a role of leadership. You just see it more as a just step of doing what you feel called to do in the next step.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I love that perspective of just thinking about it. Not necessarily, it doesn't sound like you were searching to be a
Right.
leader or trying to be a leader, but by obeying God and just taking that next step, He was putting you into that role.
Right. And it's weird because you think when you think of obedience, you just think you're following. But obviously, because it's God and He's invisible and, like He's not like a boss telling me what to do, it's a little different, but it still very much felt like I'm just following what I feel like God's calling me to do. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. So, what would you say your definition of leadership is now?
Man, as I have like two girls that I lead like with a team and doing different things with the church as far as Bible studies, I feel like it has a lot to do with investing in somebody else's best interest. Like basically creating an environment where you're helping somebody else thrive. And I honestly, we'll probably get into it, but I had probably hired these two girls. I probably had them working for me for almost 2 years before I realized, oh, I need to be leading them. And I know that sounds crazy, but like you kind of just hire people and you think they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and then you forget that like this is an investment you're making in them, and without that, they're working for you, but you're not leading them in anything.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, taking that time to be intentional about how
Yes.
you're investing in them. Yeah.
Yeah. And realizing that like, man, I have just been like telling them like, here's what we need to do this, go do this, and not equipping them as well as I would have liked. And it's still very much like, I feel like I'm learning so much about it still. And in busy seasons, it's easier for the feeling like you have to put out so many fires and, like it really takes a lot of work to be intentional, but it's always worth it.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's get into your business experience a little bit. We're talking about business this month on the podcast. So I'd love to hear
Yeah.
about your journey into business and into leadership that way. So, can you take us back in time to when you started your company and just tell us how did Val Marie Paper get started?
Yeah. So it was actually another example of that time of just feeling like you're just taking this step because you need to and not realizing that I was becoming an entrepreneur because I was working at a newspaper and I really thought that that was going to be what I did for, 40, 50 years was writing for a newspaper. There was just an opportunity for being a wedding planner in town. And it was really funny because I literally just saw, I was like, okay, there's one person doing it in town. She doesn't have a website. This is a really good opportunity for somebody to start a business. And I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. It's not like I didn't envision myself leading in any capacity. I feel like
Yeah.
I was always very good at just following the rules. And I just remember thinking, this is an opportunity like I don't want to pass up. And so it felt like just a very natural step and not a decision of I'm going to start a business, but I got to take this chance. So from there, I did wedding invitations along with wedding planning, just using what I had learned in school, like laying out newspapers and different things like that. And while I was pregnant with my first daughter, I was still doing the wedding invitations. I had sold the wedding planning business, and I was just feeling very anxious. So I created this prayer journal. And again, like it just kind of, I just needed to print at least 50 for my printer to print me one, one that I wanted for myself. And so I was like, I'm just going to put this out there, not looking to start a business, but just looking to cover my costs. And it just kind of, it kind of exploded. And I think that's why it's weird, because I don't think you really ever, well, and I'm sure there's other people who do, but you don't necessarily set out to be a leader. And that's why, you know, podcasts like yours and just education and learning are so important, because we don't just go in knowing everything how to do this.
Okay, so you were pregnant with your daughter. Was it your first daughter or your second daughter?
My first daughter.
Okay, you're pregnant with your first daughter. You printed 50 journals, and did you like have a website at that point, or did you just put them up on Facebook? I'm just curious how did that explode?
I just put it on Instagram, and I think it was very much in a time when people shared their quiet times all the time on Instagram. So I feel like it just kind of snowballed. And I think it was just a good reminder that like, I'm not the only one who struggles with prayer. And I think sometimes you just think, oh, like maybe 50 people would think this is like needed in their life. And then you're like, no, we all struggle with this. So it just kind of, I just didn't anticipate that. And then again, just people sharing on social media about products they love and things like that. I feel like it definitely grew from there.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So take us down the journey. What's the next thing that happened in terms of like growing this company after you sold those first 50 journals?
Yeah, I feel like it grew pretty fast in the first year or two. And then we kind of hit I guess it was for the first few years, because it was whenever I was pregnant with my second daughter, I was definitely coasting in the business. I feel like we had been doing so well. I just kind of expected things to keep happening. And whenever I was pregnant, I was feeling so sick. It was kind of like you're just doing the bare minimum to get by. And truthfully, I felt like it didn't require a ton of me in the beginning, because there weren't like boutique shops carrying like journals like this at the time. I think it might have even been before She Reads Truth had like, you know, their journals. So I think it was just like a novelty. And then when things started popping up, we started getting a lot more competition. And I think it was 2016. I had my daughter in May. So I took a month off, and I had just been working a lot less towards the end of pregnancy. And our business slowed down, in my mind, drastically. Whenever I look back at the numbers, it wasn't like crazy, but it just felt like, what's going on? It was a very discouraging season, because I just felt like I had to like keep doing everything that everybody else was doing just to like stay afloat or compete. And it really got me into just this like negative place of like feeling like I needed to create based on what other people were doing, as opposed to, like I said, like that whole idea of why I started wedding planning, why I started the journals, of just feeling like I was just following something God was calling me to do. So we had to step back and really change our approach of like how we were going to do business differently. And this really started with my sister encouraging me with a quote. So I shared this quote in Grumpy Mom. It says, God doesn't give out extra credit if we finish our mission and start working on someone else's. And I think it was just a really good reminder for me that like what everybody else is doing is not the pool from which I pull what I'm supposed to be doing. It's just following after God. And I read a book, Blue Ocean Strategy, or Blue Ocean Shift, actually, which was very practical, kind of hard to understand, but just very, very good in helping me change the way I looked at business, and kind of just got us out of the mindset of like, what's everybody doing and how do we like keep going with them? But like, how do we do something just so radically different that we're not even competing with other people? And, you know, obviously like there's some stuff we're not going to be able, like we're still doing paper products. We're still, you know, doing stuff that we hope encourages people in their prayer life. Like, so it's still in that space, but we just try to do things so based on what we feel like the Lord calling us to, that we don't feel overwhelmed anymore by the fact that there's people who pop up with new products that are similar to ours, not copycats, but just, obviously we're not the only person making journals. We
Right.
don't get so spun up by it anymore. We can kind of just know that as long as we're doing what the Lord's calling us to do, like this other stuff, like they're going to reach people that we're not going to reach,
Right.
but if we're trying to step on their toes and do exactly what they're doing, like we're not reaching different people. We're just stealing people that they could be reaching potentially. So I get really fired up about it because I just think about all the opportunities, the creativity of our Lord, just what he has for us if we would just say yes to him instead of just looking at what other people are doing and using that as like our idea list or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that comparison tends to be a struggle for for all of us, but
Yeah.
especially if you're in business, you look at what other people are doing, or if you're a writer or a blogger or a
Mm-hmm.
podcast or any of these things, it's so easy to get distracted by looking at what other people are doing instead of just focusing on what God is asking you to
Mm-hmm.
do. So I love that you pointed that out. So I'm curious to know if there's any particular decisions that you've made where you've
Mm-hmm.
kind of gone against traditional business advice and
Yeah.
instead followed what you knew God was calling you to do.
Yes. Okay. I can think of two examples, and one is really small and silly, but we do not use boomerang on Instagram.
Okay.
And that is like, so like our brand is serious. It's mature. And I use these words, like sometimes we even joke, like we're like old ladies with our glasses, like we're nerdy. We like things organized. We do not use confetti. We do not use like cheery things, but we have other brands that we're friends with that do this really well, but it's not us. It's not our personality. Like you're not going to see a video of me like jumping around being super goofy because it's not my personality. So I remember whenever I was talking to the girls, Kara and Ashley, who work with me, just saying like, we don't do boomerang. And it's not that like I'm against it, because I think some people do it really creatively and they use it really well. But it felt like if we did it, it would be forced, like it wouldn't be just naturally part of our brand. It would be, we're doing it because everybody else is doing it. It's small, but I think it just became a symbol for us that like, no, like this is just an example of the fact that like we can do things differently. And again, like if one day we figure out a way to do boomerang that's like really on brand for us, we'll do it. But like right now, it feels like we wouldn't be doing it for that reason. Another thing that we have done differently, and this is, probably more that pertains to like product based businesses, but the standard of advice of if you're selling a product is to get a quantity small enough to where you can sell out, because if you sell out, you make your product more appealing, all these things. Especially if you have a yearly product, it's worth it to sell out. That way, the next year you can tell people, hey, we sell out really early. You're definitely going to want to buy early, things like that.
Right. Yeah. Create the urgency.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. And we have kind of decided, we know that people share all of their journals around the new year. We did not want to sell out before that point happened, because we knew there's going to be so many people that are going to come looking for this journal. And we have a 6-month journal, they can get that. But we did not want somebody to say, oh, I'll just wait till next year. I'll wait till I can get the big one. And so we decided it's okay if we still have we probably have 200-300 left, and we're in the middle of February. And that in a business sense is not smart, but it's been really good. I got to give away 200 or maybe even 300 out at my church a couple weeks ago. Just any lady who wanted one could take one. We got to give away a journal to all of the teachers at my daughter's school. And we're able to we're probably going to give away some more that don't, if whatever doesn't go by the end of February, we'll probably give away. But we just feel like that probably doesn't make our product look as valuable, or you know what I'm saying? Like it makes it look like, oh, we couldn't sell out. It's like, we just bought a ton and it was worth the risk. And another thing, like we could have discounted our journals as soon as January 1st hit, but we do pre-orders in August, and we tell the people who buy from us in August, pre-order it for $40 instead of $47. And we tell them, this is the lowest price. You're getting our best deal because you are essentially helping us figure out how much we need to order. And you're buying it 4 months before you can actually use it. Like that, we're grateful for that. So there's no Black Friday sales on it. There's no discounting it after January. And most businesses probably think like, why are they not discounting it? And it's because we value the trust of those people who pre-order so much. We want them to come back and know, like, I know that I'm going to get the best deal and she's not going to like just drop the price later on me, something like
Yeah.
that. So
Right.
those are some things we do differently. And again, it comes back to just that, like, the alternative's not bad. Like, I'm not saying, like, decide how you want to run your business, decide how the Lord's calling you to run your business. But those are things that we've done. We also close our shop on Sundays, which is kind of weird because it's online. Like, it's not affecting anybody. And that's not something that I think every Christian business has to do to, whatever. But it was a personal conviction I had that I was encouraging. I talk a lot about rest. I talk a lot about Sabbath, and it was unfair for me to encourage other people to rest and slow down when I could still have this like income that could come in on Sundays. I
Yeah.
wasn't doing anything, but I still had an opportunity to make money on Sundays. And I just didn't think that it lined up with what I was telling people. So
Yeah.
those are just some examples of like different things that we do that come from outside of, I guess, like just straight business advice.
Right. Yeah. It sounds like a lot of these decisions that you've made have been based on some values that you kind of run your life and your business by. Do you
Yes.
want to share a little bit about those values that you might use in your business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll first tell you I am an Enneagram 1.
Oh,
So,
me
oh,
too.
okay. So that makes sense. But I
Okay.
follow the rules. Like, I have this standard for our business, and I feel like we do want to stick to it. We do want to be really consistent. Like, we got asked to be on a podcast that branding wise, it was not consistent with our message, and we said no. And the conversation hurt their feelings, and it was hard to just say like, we're just trying to be really consistent. People come to us because they appreciate that consistency, and it's important to us. It does mean that it makes some aspects hard, or like
Yeah.
it does challenge us for sure. But we really value consistency. We really value white space. We do not want to put out products that are fluffy, that aren't super purposeful. Like, if you
Mm.
like, we want even the free stuff that we have to have a lot of value, and for you to not go to something and be like, oh, like, I don't even know what I just got. Like, we want it to be super valuable. I know these aren't probably typical values, but
No,
like
that's okay. I love it.
structure, bullet points, like things that just very organized content. And like, you'll notice our design is very minimal. Like, our journals are minimal, and it's because we want to leave it as like such a distraction free place that it doesn't add to the chaos. We know our lives are noisy and chaotic enough. Like, we don't want to add to that. So
Yeah.
those are definitely our the majority of the things that we go by, just consistency, white space, and high quality content.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it makes your business, I mean, it's probably a huge part of how you've been so successful because you've chosen to really hone in on what you know
Mm-hmm.
you want to represent to people. And so often, I think those of us with businesses, and I think maybe it happens more with people who are in like a service-based business or a content marketing kind of business, but maybe even in the product space of trying to be all things to all people,
Yeah.
and just trying to appeal to everyone. And that's usually just like shooting yourself in the foot when you try to do that. So I love that you've really honed in on what you know you want to offer
Mm-hmm.
people.
Yeah, we actually, like, at one point I have created meal planning notepads, calendars. I'm trying to think, just notepads with your name on it, or like get it done, like different
Yeah.
things. And it didn't do well. Like, I didn't sell much of it. And it just, like, there's other people who do that really well, but that's not what, I feel like we were called to do. And at one point we had a lot of products, and we felt like the Lord was just like calling us to just focus on prayer. And we cut out a lot of different things. And it was interesting because the response that we got were people just super grateful because they're like, yeah, like I feel overwhelmed by all the options of what I can buy out there. There's so many different products we can get. We can get Bible studies and journals and notebooks, and we can't use everything. We can't use it all well. So I think to simplify our shop, which don't get me wrong, like there's still lots of options, but we've pared it down to where we just feel like we're helping people focus on like what we feel like is going to transform their life the most as far as what we can offer. So yeah, I don't know.
I love that. No, that makes so much sense. And I think that's so wise, but hard to do because you potentially could make more money, right? If you kept expanding and expanding and expanding. And for some people, that is what they choose to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it sounds like you're really focusing on what you sense is right for you in this phase of your life and your business.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like either decision, as long as you know that that's what God's calling you to, like, go for it.
Yeah. I'm pausing here to let you know that this episode is sponsored by my business, Morningstar Media Services. At Morningstar, it's my goal to help Christian business owners like you grow an audience and make an impact without compromising your faith or your values. And I have a free gift for you if you already have a podcast or if you're thinking about starting a podcast. I want to give you my free podcast workflow checklist. This is the process I use each and every week to keep my podcast on track and to work with my clients as well. This is what allows us to go through each week without missing a single step and keep everything running smoothly. It also helps us to save a lot of time on the back end of the podcast process. To get the free checklist, text the word podcast to 917-905-8801, and I will send that checklist right out to you. So I'd love if you could share a few leadership lessons that you've learned in owning your own business and in the past several years of running this company. What are some of the lessons you've learned in terms of leadership that you might want to share?
Yes. The first one is probably just that it is like a skill to learn, that we aren't just like going to know how to do it right off the bat. I feel like I've really dug into like reading books and learning, and it's amazing what I don't know about the topic. And I think it's humbling, but it's just been really good because I feel like I'm able to incorporate things that if I thought I should have it all figured out, I never would have done. And I think the second one is just knowing how much my energy affects other people. And that goes back to just, again, like the leadership of a team. Like, I guess I see it with my kids mostly, but I know it affects my team too, but they're not 3 and 6. So
right.
They absorb a little bit more of my negativity or whatever. But like with my kids, you just see like if I'm negative, they're going to have a harder day. Like it always correlates. And if I can be a cheerleader, which is hard some days whenever you just feel like you're fighting against a lot. But I think that's been really important for me to learn. And just like I said, to see in my own home, to see how obvious it is. Like there's no like, I can just be negative and be in my own little bubble. It's going to affect things. So besides like leading a team, just leading myself so that the person that they're getting is influencing them in positive ways.
Yeah. Tell me more about what it looks like to lead yourself.
Oh man. I feel like it has a lot to do with boundaries. Just being an entrepreneur, it's very easy to, we've been talking about it, like to just get overwhelmed, to do everything. And yeah, it requires a lot of asking myself tough questions about whether we need to do something. And yeah, I keep mentioning it, but like just having this consistent view of what you want your business to be. Like you said, the values of it, like if we know consistently what we want to do, then it's easier to make decisions when opportunities come, because opportunities are going to keep coming. And I think that's always my prayer right now is like, Father, just give us wisdom on what opportunities to say yes to and which to say no to. And my flesh would love to just like do everything so that we can like be the biggest thing since sliced bread or something. But like, that's not, that's not God. That's not, he doesn't say that that's how what has to happen for us to be effective or to glorify him, you know?
Yeah.
So I think just learning those boundaries. And I think humility would also be a really good thing that I'm having to teach myself or, yeah, like lead myself in, because it is easy to, me and my husband talk about this sometimes, how like you can hear from people online and on your screens and everything of how you're doing something that might have changed their life or their day even,
Yeah.
and you can get puffed up with that. And then you can go home and your family can get frustrated with you and you want to just be like, well, wait a second. I'm like, you guys don't understand. And there's just so much humility in it because that like God can use anybody. Like I'm grateful that he's using me, but this is not in my own strength. And if I decide to think that I can do it without him, it's going to collapse so fast.
Mm.
And one verse that I remind myself on, I'll just tell you specifics, like on days like pre-order day in August, Black Friday and around Christmas, and then whenever we go to events, like we're going to Spring at the Silos pretty soon. But on those big, huge, fun days of business of just reaching a lot of people, selling a lot of journals, talking to a lot of people, I read Deuteronomy 8. It's where they're talking about basically God saying, like, don't forget where this success came from. Don't forget who provided for you. I'm the one who you wandered 40 years in the desert and your shoes didn't wear out and your clothes didn't wear out or your feet didn't swell, which I think is funny. I think they're like, oh man, that would be that. I hope they remember that. But yeah, just do not forget that the power that you have to do anything is through the Lord. So that I come back to that a lot to keep me humble.
Yeah. That's such a good reminder. And I think that when we're in, and I think with your role, you have a lot of followers on Instagram, you have a lot of people watching you, right? So it's that humility is so key to make sure that we're staying focused on what's really important, and that yes, you are having an impact with what you're doing. But I just love that you're trying to remind yourself that it's not about you and it's not about,
Yeah.
anything that you could do in and of your own strength.
It's
So,
well, I met with my publishers, like, I guess it was like a year ago, and we were sitting in the car. She was driving us back to our hotel room, and she was just like, Valerie, my prayer for you is that it was before the book came out, but she was like, my prayer for you is that you would stay humble, because she had seen, like just what can happen when authors like if they release a book or they get lots of success or something. And I remember not being offended at all by that and being
mm,
really, really grateful that my publisher could feel that way about me and could care about me as a person, not just the sales of the books, but could care about me as a person, to just desire that for my heart. Because, you can be prideful and like be successful for a while,
yeah.
but the fact that she cared about me like that, and that is something I've thought about a lot. And I feel like it almost probably put the wheels in motion of like, whoa, I don't want to go down that path. I've since read Andrew Murray's little tiny book, Humility. My mom had it at her house and she was cleaning out her cabinet, so it was on a desk. And I just remember thinking, I'm going to pick this up. It's little. But like humility is not something I ever really wanted to read about before. Like even like self-help topics and like the things that are going to be more visible of change. It has been the sweetest little book, and I feel like God has just put a new attitude in my heart since reading that, and a new desire for humility like I did not have before. So
Mm, mm. Yeah, I love that. I'm going to have to check that out, and I'll put the link to that in the show notes for
yeah.
people so they can grab it. So, Val, you talk about on your website, you share that you get asked a lot about how you balance everything, being a wife, a mom, running your business. You write on your blog, you've written books, and you have 8 principles on that about page. So I'm going to put the link in the show notes for people, because we're probably not going to be able to get into all of them, but I would love to chat about a few of them for a few minutes. So the first one that you list is that you pray about everything. And that seems kind of obvious, right? Because you have a prayer journal company.
Yeah.
But I would love to hear a little bit more about what that means to you and what that looks like for you.
Yeah. I'm like, man, I genuinely pray about everything. And I feel like it starts with knowing, like, basically what we've been talking about. We're going to pray for things if we are dependent on the Lord for it. If we feel like we can do it on our own, we won't pray about it. So if I feel like I can go through my day without the Lord, I'm not going to pray about my day typically. Or, like we have to know that to get through my day, I've got to do it with the Lord. We've got to have that dependence on him. So I think for me, it has just started with feeling really dependent that, we pray about our collection. We have a blog post coming out in a few weeks about the first step for us is getting ideas from people from our survey. Like people share what products they'd like to sell, like us to do. And then we kind of put them through the checklist of kind of what we told you, like, is this consistent with our brand? Is this something that would fit our shop? Is it something that's really valuable? But we write those things out that we think fit that. And then we pray about it because we really do want to only put out products that are, something that the Lord has for us. That's just an example, but yes, I pray about everything.
Yeah. That's awesome. I actually have your Fresh Start journal that I got when I went to the Hope Writers Conference, and I've been going through that and I love it. So there's a quote that I highlighted, and it says, "We will never make time to pray if we forget that it is powerful and effective.
Mm-hmm.
We will never make time to pray if we are comfortable taking this day on our own." So I think that just reiterates what you just shared.
Yeah, how funny. Obviously it's in my head. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that is definitely related to what we just talked about with the issue of humility, because I think the issue of thinking that we can do it on our own is an issue of pride. And if we are just getting up in the morning and thinking, oh yeah, I've got this, we buy into kind of the cultural norms of you've got this, you can do it. It's, just go, I don't know, the other phrases that we hear that are based on self rather than based on reliance on God. So anyway, I think that just is a good reminder. It's a reminder that I need because I often get trapped in the issue of pride too. So another principle that you talk about on that page is practicing margin. So what does practicing margin look like for you?
Oh man. So it basically means that I do not fill up my schedule. I do not fill up my home. I do not fill up anything to capacity, knowing that there needs to be white space. There needs to be space for the sick days, the days that, like things are just going to be chaotic. And I think this has actually been something I've had to come back to. Our church actually has been going through a sermon series on margin. And it was funny, my pastor knows that I'm really into this. So he actually emailed me to ask if I had any recommendations of books and things. But I sat there and just was like, I needed everything. I needed everything he shared again, because I feel like I'm in a season of wanting to do so many different things. Like we have 2 books coming out at the end of the year. One's like a prayer prompt, like it's written prayers. And then one's like an actual book that I've kind of been writing for the last 2 years. But there's also a book I want to write on prayer. And I have been trying to cram it into this year so much. And I just feel like the hard part about margin is that most of the time, everything that you want to keep is really good stuff. You're not trying to keep really dumb stuff.
Yeah.
Usually some stuff you are because you just have to out of like obligation. But it's taken me a long time to just think like, Valerie, do you want to be stressed out every day because you have to make sure you get this many words written or this done in time? Is that how you want to go about your year to make this happen? And it's not worth it. And I'm still trying to pray about what that means for the deadlines and how to work that out. But I think just if we realized how different a circumstance could be if it wasn't stressful, if it wasn't crammed into something, I think we would take out some of those good things, but maybe things that we know aren't necessarily like what God's calling us to do.
Yeah. One of the things that I see a lot is it seems like women leaders in particular struggle with this because we either put a lot of pressure on ourselves or we have actual pressure, whether it's in work or life or business or family. So are there any advice that you would have for someone who's like, I just don't even know how to start creating margin? Like I have no space in my schedule and I have no idea how to start.
Yeah. Well, I think one reason we struggle with it so much is because once you do something well, like lead something at church or do something, you're going to get asked to do more things because you have said yes and you've done a good job, or, like there are not a lot of people who are volunteering for things. So I think just know that you're going to be asked for things that you're not supposed to do, but somebody else maybe doesn't know what you're supposed to do. There's some people who are like, I've prayed about this and I really feel like I'm calling you to this, or like God wants you to do this. Still pray about it. Like
Yeah.
just trust that like you need to hear that too. But I think it's really easy for people to ask us to do things without having our best interest. And not that they're bad. Like they're just doing what they're supposed to be doing, like trying to find people for things. But I think just knowing that at least lets us know that not every opportunity that comes on my doorstep is going to be something I'm supposed to do. And it can be really, really hard to say no to things. I feel like just in the last week, I've gotten a couple of text messages from people asking for things. And even in my head, I'm thinking, I just wish I could explain to them how many of these things that I'm getting asked to do, or so that they know, like, we just feel like we don't want anybody to think we're being lazy, especially like women leaders. Like,
Yeah.
this is a struggle. We don't want anybody to think we're being lazy. So we take on way more than we should when they don't have the full picture of our life. And I've heard it said a lot, no is a complete answer or complete sentence. If we need to say no, we need to say no. And do that prayerfully so that you can say that confidently. Like you don't want to just be like, no, and then like backpedal into like, well, if you really need something, like pray about it and just feel comfortable in that. And I think like in just a really practical way, write out everything that you're committed to and write out how much time those things take. And just like, I did this recently with the goals that I have this year. Some of them really fit. They fit in my year. I don't need to be overwhelmed by it. It's going to be great. And then other things you're just like, okay, this doesn't even fit if I'm at my best. And I'm not going to be at my best. Like the girls are going to be out of school for 2 different weeks. I'm going to be out of town over here. Like this only fits if I have an ideal work situation every single day. And I think if we just get really honest about how much time stuff takes, like every day in my calendar or in my planner, I put what I have to do and then how much time it's going to take. And I do not schedule more than 3 hours of my 4-hour workday because I know things are going to happen. So if we're scheduling every moment that we have, then we cannot have margin. So yeah.
Yeah. It's a common trap. And I actually mentioned this on one of our past episodes when we were reflecting on 2019. And I told my co-host, like, I need to learn. And I've told myself this many times that I way overestimate how much I can get done in one day. Because in my mind, I can do all those things, but in reality, it's not possible. So being realistic and giving yourself that margin is so important. So, okay, let's talk about one more of the principles that you mention on your, how you keep everything going. And that is the principle of routines. So tell us a little bit more about like what your routines are for whether it's a typical day, a typical week, however you want to share that.
Yeah. So my girls both go to school, but this year I really wanted to like focus on my health too. So I try to go to the gym right whenever I drop them off. And then I actually try to get to the car line about 30 minutes before they get out of school so that I can that's another way I have margin. Like if I come in on 2 wheels to pick them up after like having a stressful work day, like it's totally different than if I have 30 minutes to sit, read a book, look over my to-do list for tomorrow. So, and then I also take a kind of long lunch. Like I make a salad and I cook a chicken breast almost every day with my salad. So basically my work hours are between like 9 and 12:30 and maybe 8:30 to 12:30. So between 3 and 4 hours.
Okay.
But what I do is every week on Fridays, I have planning time. So every day has like a block, or I batch my work basically. Mondays are usually for projects. Tuesdays are for writing either the blog or the book stuff. And then Wednesdays are for like podcasts, marketing, different things like that. And Thursday is for like admin, emails, team meetings, different things like that. And then Friday is planning because it's a little bit of a shorter day for my girls. But I know that going in. So on Fridays, whenever I'm planning, it's very easy to put projects on different days and to also know that if I have an email that's like, hey, can you respond back? Whatever. I know I can tell them I'm going to respond back on Thursday. If it's like, something that I really need to think about, or like, I know that I have that blocked off, so I don't have to be stressed out until I send that email or something. It
Yeah.
also just helps me to stay, like, because I have so many different writing projects, like one day, the first, Tuesday of the month, I try to write 3 blog posts. Maybe like if they're really long, I can usually only do 2. And then like the next Tuesday I'll get to write on the book. And the next Tuesday I'll write some more blog posts. But it means I'm actually writing on bigger projects than just like the putting out the fires and handling email. And that's one reason why on Mondays I start with projects, because if I start in my inbox, like I'm not going to get anything that needs to get done. So yeah, so basically I have it written out in my planner, the 3 things I need to do every day for work. And I just start there and get that done between 9 and 12. But that's how I plan it out weekly. And it's been really, really helpful.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think that people can find a lot more information about all of these things we're talking about on the link that I'm going to put in the show notes. So if you want more specifics on Val's routines and what those look like, then be sure to check out the show notes. So if you could share advice with a younger leader just starting out in her ministry or her career, what would you tell her?
I think I would go back to the humility and just maybe just share not just the importance of that, but just to share how that's going to change her as a leader. Because I think there's this tendency to feel like if I'm leading, I need to look like an expert. I need to look like I have it all together. And we see from Jesus himself that like, that's not, you don't need to go around like the tallest person in the room trying to like make sure everybody knows that you're the boss. And I think if we're younger, we feel the need to do that even more. So I feel like if for just a young girl starting out, I would just say like, just know that having a teachable spirit, being really humble, and like knowing that you have a lot to learn or that you can learn is going to transform you as a leader. It's not going to make you look like you're young and immature and you don't know what you're doing. I just think about that. Like if I saw a kid, like 2 kids who are, one thought they knew everything and one was just like soaking up knowledge, it would be obvious to me to think like that the one soaking up knowledge is going to be awesome because they're so teachable. Yeah. And I think our impression is that we need to look like we know everything. And that's absolutely, it's just the opposite. So yeah.
Yes. Such good advice. Good advice. I think that's good advice for all of us, no matter our age and no matter what part of our journey we're in.
Yeah. I still
always
feel young.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we always wrap up our conversation, Val, with our leaders or learners. So we believe leaders are always learning. So it kind of goes right with what you just said.
Yeah.
So do you have something that God has been teaching you lately, or maybe a favorite book or podcast that you've listened to lately that you would want to share with our audience?
Yes. Okay. So I just teaching so much, had a little crisis moment of thinking I need to go back to seminary. And this goes back to what I just said of just feeling like I need to look like an expert. I need to look whatever. And I slowed down a little bit. Maybe seminary will be in my future one day, but I basically have just been reading a lot of more theology books, how to study the Bible. And that was a humbling moment to know that I want the paper so that I can advertise the paper. But really what God's just calling me to do is to say like, yeah, you should be like spending more time learning about how to study the Bible so that you can be a better teacher, not so that everybody knows you're a better teacher, if that makes sense. So I've been reading, Jenny Allen actually recommended, I'm pretty sure on one of her recent podcasts, Grasping the Word. And it's like a textbook, but it's pretty simple to read. But I'm learning so much and it's been really, really good. I think like, again, like I feel like I saw this somewhere recently of just like the idea that like the Holy Spirit's my teacher, or like, that's where I'm getting like, it was kind of forgetting that like, yes, we can be led by the Holy Spirit, but we also want to be really diligent and know that like, we want to take this seriously. If we are a leader, then like we do need to take that role seriously. And if we're not taking it seriously with the 12 women that we have a Bible study with, then like we need to start whenever it's small so that if he does give us an opportunity to shepherd lots of people, he can trust us with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Being faithful with what he's given us for
Yes.
resources and for information and knowledge. I think that's a huge part of that. So yeah, I love that. That's amazing. I can totally relate to the seminary thing too. I've had that same thought in my head. Oh, I need to go back. I need to get the MDiv or whatever. And
Yeah.
I love what you said about that. So this has been wonderful, Val, and I really appreciate all that you've shared about your journey. And I would love for you just to close us out with sharing where can people connect with you, and if you have any resources that you'd want to point them to, this is a great time to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So you can find pretty much all of our stuff at valmariepaper.com or me on Instagram at Val Woerner, and it's WOERNER. And we do have one resource that would probably be helpful, especially just in the struggling with the margin and the rest. But we have a little email series for entrepreneurs all about rest and resting on the Sabbath. We know it's really hard to feel like even giving up one day of work, just it feels impossible and it feels like a waste. So this little series, it's like 5 days. It's just to encourage us and to delight in that rest.
That's awesome. That's great. We'll put that in the show notes. And I think I also have a freebie that Kara, I think, sent to me. And it's how to perform a prayer audit for business. And so that would be perfect if you're a business owner as well. And I'll put that one in there too. So those sound like both amazing resources that are very purposeful, like you shared before. So thanks again, Val, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved chatting.
Thanks for joining us on the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. We look forward to chatting with you next week. And don't forget, your leadership matters, and it's time for you to embrace your gifts and lead with confidence.